What we're looking to do here is to create a connection with the body. We're not at war with the body here. What quality do we want to magnify is the question. The horse dance is a practice that has been used for centuries. It's widely featured throughout a lot of different martial arts. It's a really excellent way to strengthen your lower body in a different way than what traditional strength training can do. It goes deeper into the body, in my experiences. We address joint integrity, tendon and ligament strength. We work on fascial blocks, and also it's a very powerful mind training activity. So today, Marcus and I will be exploring some of the key things to consider when exploring the horse dance, and you'll get really three key steps to improve your results from horse dance training. So let's dive into it. So let's start off and just have a look at the horse dance as a whole, and I'll let you begin our conversation, Marcus.
Yeah. And I reflect back on my journey and I started doing horse dance practices. It was very humbling. I came with a background of heavy squatting, heavy deadlifting. And then, yeah, I met you as a movement coach or as a teacher. And yeah, one of the first things we started to explore was horse dance. And what I've gathered in this simple practice is how my body was conditioned and just facing reality, what I learned my body over all these years of doing sports and heavy lifting. So in the beginning is what it was very confronting just to go in a easy horse dance and feeling how all my thigh muscles will start to cramp up and my knees were hurting and my lower back was hurting, just to feel all the tension accumulated over the years of training in my body. And in a way, it was a beautiful practice, and still it is, just to connect with the body, feel where the body is, and then just start doing things with the body together and not trying to fight it and not trying to push it to do new records, just to feel where the body is at and give the body space to adapt and balancing our tension. This perspective, it is very deep, not only on a physical level, because when we talk about tension, we experienced it on a deeper level that these tensions are often also mental emotional tensions. And yeah, those are pains we are often not used to feel and to allow to move on.
One of the real hidden pieces of wisdom that gets uncovered in horse dance practice, consistent horse dance practice, which is not it's not the easiest thing to do. It's confronting. One of the key differences is, like in a traditional weight training exercise, there's a start, a middle, and an end of the movement. You start in whatever starting position. Let's say you're in a squat, which is a similar pattern, whether you got weight on your back or you're holding a weight or you're just doing body weight, there is a moment where you've got structural advantage. You can lock out the weight, you can be in your skeletal system, your muscles, you know, aren't working as hard. Then you'll go through the lowering phase or eccentric phase of the movement. That's where a lot of the work's happening. You'll get to the bottom, depending on what you do. You might have a pause at the bottom, or you might spring out of the bottom using that stretch reflex at the bottom. And then you come back through the raising phase or the concentric phase of the movement, and that repeats. So that has its own challenge in and of itself. But each time you kind of get a little break. You get a little break at the top,
Yeah.
depending on your current mobility, you might get a little break at the bottom. It's different. And whereas the horse dance, you're sitting in the middle or wherever you are in that range the whole time. So you go through this journey of lactic building up in your muscles. And it's easier in like a traditional squatting sense to kind of hide from things. You might be able to distribute your weight and like bring your hips back and take it out of certain parts of your knees or your feet, or you might be able to bend your back further forward in different positions to accommodate. And not always you put all of your weight into your legs.
Yeah.
And so this is where it can be really humbling because you're practicing stacking everything over your legs. You're gonna feel a lot of weight building in your legs, a lot of lactic building up. And this is some of the hidden power of it. While that can be uncomfortable, what we learn to do is to relax in that presence. And that's actually a really powerful emotional training tool because here you are in the furnace of a challenge. What are you going to do? Like, that's the thing. Like, how are you going to meet that? Because you're going to meet challenge and stress in life. And this is a wonderful process that you can go through consciously to meet these challenges and essentially like learn to relax into them rather than just like grit your teeth and headbutt your way through it. That doesn't work in the horse dance. You're just going to fail in that regard. There's so much more when you learn to surrender to that, and you really start to see what you're made of and what your body's capable of. So there's some of the things that I really appreciate about horse dance practice and how it can differ to traditional squatting based training or weight based training. Not to make any of that bad, because it's great in its own purpose. The horse dance will provide a really excellent complement to all of those practices and has some extra things that do present. So let's go into how do we how do we progress, from wherever you're at. How do you start to progress to wherever you want to go? Because everyone's going to want to go to a different place. For
Yeah.
me, one of the initial goals was like to get to kind of like this guy at the end, the stallion, for a 5-minute period. And over a series of years, I reached that point. I'll have to retest to see where I'm at because I kind of went through it and it's like, yes, you get to it. And then you almost need a bit of a mental break once you've accomplished it, and you can balance out. But I'll hand over to you, Marcus, as we go into the progressions. And really, kind of one of the key things that we're going to be talking to here is just you might want to get to that kind of stallion phase and want to force your body into it. And that's a really common thing. If this is what the horse stance looks like, but that's not going to work that well for you, particularly if you've had injuries and, if there's like binding or scar tissue in your fascial system, and particularly around your hips and your knees and your feet and legs and all that sort of stuff. So let's find the sweet spot so you can do it gracefully and gradually progress.
Yeah. And I was definitely the guy just going full into it because I was used to lift heavy weights. And then I looked at this position, the horse stance, okay, can't be a challenge to just go full in. Yeah, but my body told me something different. So I really tried to push it, but this led to ankle and knee pains. And this is one common thing when people are practicing horse stance. They are going too wide, too deep, too soon. And this will just bring up some problems in the body because the body is signaling, I'm not used to this type of resistance, to this type of force going through the system. So we need to start somewhere where we feel like, oh yeah, the body can handle it up to 5 minutes over a period of time I'm practicing it. And this is what those positions are showing, to just start in a more high stance where I feel like comfortable. And in the beginning, often it's just those shuffles you can see on the left side, to just go up to 2 or 3 shuffles apart and just check in with the body, how it feels like, and just sitting in, relaxing into this position, feel and get a feeling where your feet want to look, and maybe just correct some degrees if your feet are really going on outside very far. Just come in to 10 to 15 degrees, not more, to give the body some time to adapt, and just sit in to the depth you're feeling comfortable, and just focus on the breath and watch the body. And when you can build up to 5 minutes easily, then just go on and widen the stance. And then you will just be on a very humbling journey where you also learn to practice with the body, to get a feeling for your body, for your whole system, and respect the physical body in with its adaptations. Our mind is very fast in doing things like, oh yeah, I can do that, but the physical system is needing time to adapt. As Benny mentioned, if there are injuries hanging around, there is maybe scar tissue, joints are blocked, fascia is adhesed, and all that stuff. So you need just to be patient, and go one step at a time.
Yeah, yeah, and that, that is it's a character building process.
Yeah,
I find, and like one thing that I'll say to add to what you shared, Marcus, was that deeper doesn't equal better.
yeah,
One of the key things that we're developing with stillness practices is, and particularly more internal focused movement practices, is we start to get into the realm of what is the quality of the experience that I'm creating? Because the quality that we meet the experience is what we magnify. And this is an important thing. So if you go into it pushing your body too fast too soon, and you're all tensed up, then you will magnify that quality. So you might hold it for longer, but it's with the quality of tension. And so
yeah,
you have to really check in with yourself of what is the quality that I want to create. And for me, like, I would like to move through life with a relative quality of relaxation. Not that I'm going to be a floppy wet noodle all the time, but to be able to relax in challenging situations. So I've got like more bandwidth. And so we're developing that bandwidth with a relaxed quality. And so, like, as you go, you might just start as you're standing, in that first stage. We haven't even classified it as a stage, but standing is a stage in and of itself,
yeah,
of just like being with your body, standing, breathing with the intent to just be able to relax your weight down into your feet, into the ground. For a lot of people, particularly if you have had imbalances and postural conditions and injuries and all of that sort of stuff, that's going to be a really powerful healing process in and of itself. And then gradually building that quality that you're looking to cultivate. And the quality could be anything that suits you. Like, one of the wonderful things about this is, like, it could be you would like to bring in the quality of like fun and joy, and so that's going to guide the way that you personally practice. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to set this 5-minute goal and then beat your head against a brick wall and go through all of this pain. Like, sure, like, you can test yourself in that way, but it could be like, I'm going to, like, connect with the quality of joy flowing through my body as I work with it in this practice. And that might sound weird, but it's really powerful. So we kind of go through that process, starting high and then gradually deepening and then gradually widening. And your feet can be really placed in whatever way, as Marcus was saying, and just find your way within that. Acknowledge that there might be differences between your left and right, and bring your attention to what is the quality that I would like to magnify as I'm doing this. And one last thing, just on the progressing toward 5 minutes, there's a couple of different ways that you can go about it as well. So you could set yourself a timer, and you just go as long as you can within that 5 minutes. And so, today, and it's not going to progress like linearly day by day. Like, in the beginning, you might notice you get these wonderful beginner gains of like, I start at 30 seconds and then I'm a minute, and then I'm a minute and a half. And then you get to a sticking point where it's like that, then it's starting to really cause physical changes. But so you can do that and just like attempt one set, go as long as you can with that quality, or you can, throughout that 5-minute period, go as long as you can, rest as much as you need, and then go again with the timer still going to 5 minutes. So you're gradually decreasing the rest periods in that. Another way that you can do it is this can either be done in a one session or throughout the course of a day, is use a stopwatch, and then each time you go into the horse stance, you start the stopwatch, and then you look to accumulate 5 minutes over the course of that practice session or that day. And so, what you do with each of those things is we're focusing on quality work rather than quantity of work. And then we gradually increase the density over time. So, these can be some really useful ways to progress your whole time, I find, just different training methods. So, we'll look into some of the qualities. There's more than this that we could go into, but these five foundations can be really useful to look at. We'll start off with one of the first principles of allowing your bones to align and sink your weight into the ground. So I'll let you start talking off to this, Marcus.
Yeah, basically what this means is just to practicing to relax your body into your feet and into your ground. What Benny mentioned already before, this can be done in the beginning just in a natural stance to just get a feeling of relaxation when you use your body in an upright position. It can maybe also be useful to just start off laying for 5 to 10 minutes so you can feel how our relaxed bodies feeling like today, and just bring it up into stance so you can feel the difference, the contrast between lying and standing, and just then go from there into the horse stance with whatever you choose for today. So you can build up this quality of relaxation from a really basic layer laying on the ground up into a standing position, up into this horse stance, because this relaxation is necessary that the body is able to balancing out muscle disbalances between tensions through the system, and the bones can align more properly with gravity. What the body always wants to do is just align the skeleton with the least resistance possible when gravity is going through the body. And
Mm.
this is what we start practicing, just to surrender to gravity and give the body space to align it in the most efficient way, what we are able to let happen. I just frame it this way.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I think that's a good distinction, because it can be commonly misunderstood when we talk about alignment as like there's a right and a wrong way to align, and particularly in the beginning, if you do have, because the fascia system is an interwoven system with no start and no end, kind of like your skin. If you have, if I do it sort of on my shirt, like if you have tensions, like you've got fascial tension that are pulling the body in a particular direction, then you try and in the beginning, align your skeleton. You're likely going to feel like torsional forces pulling you in different directions. So if we push against that too hard in the beginning, like you create this internal resistance. So what we kind of want to do is just find the alignment. It might not look like perfect alignment, whatever that is in the beginning. Like it might be you adjust your feet height, or your like your pelvis might be turned, or your spine might be in a certain direction. But just like wherever you can kind of find that start point where you can find that relative relaxation, like Marcus was saying, and then gradually progress toward like a more open centered alignment over time. So it's sort of like honoring where you're at and then having a trajectory of where you're moving toward. And this one principle is how I addressed a lot of the issues that I was having with my spine and scoliosis, was continuing to stabilize a new reality. So you develop new neuromuscular connections, you develop new fascial opportunities for movement, so that then we're not continuing to fight against our own system to find a new way to align. So going into the second point, dropping the tailbone, and just straight off the bat, I'll just say, because this is a really common cue and also misunderstood as well, of like really trying to force the pelvis down, which just creates more blockages. So, like, be aware of the strength of the intent of which we apply postural cues, because if we're too strong in that intent, we end up locking the body down, and we're not trying to do that. We're trying to like actually be in alignment with the breathing, which is always moving, but then allow that to happen internally. So, would you like to add any more with sinking the tailbone, Marcus?
Yeah, in the beginning, it is maybe more useful to just move the tailbone into the other direction so your hips are able to open up.
Mm, yes.
Because if you're pressing down your tailbone too soon, your hips will lock. So your thigh muscle, your thigh bone will just be pulled into the socket, and
Yes.
then your hip is blocked. If you just move your tailbone back, you will create this space, this opportunity to really create space for rotation and movement in your hip socket.
Mm,
Or if you feel like more the body wants to go backward, just go with this intent of the body, so you can create the structure that the that your hip is able to move freely. And then
yes.
over time, when this position is stable, the tailbone will sink naturally without pushing it.
That's a really useful way of looking at it. And yeah, like one of the core things with this is that the main thing that we're looking at, because this principle is also seen in a lot of more cultivation based practices, particularly qigong, where we're looking to create the path of least resistance through the spinal column. And, so a lot of the time, if we're not aware of the pelvic position and it's going into a full forward or anterior tilt, then this can create blockages around the flow of blood and energy through that area, and particularly through the lower spine. So, kind of what we're talking here is just like find your sweet spot rather than affixing to, I have to put my tailbone down. Like, find where you're at, allow the pelvis to gradually sink over time. And this can then start to open up not just your mobility, but then also the way that energy moves through the body as well as you explore it.
And naturally, when the tailbone is moving more in the other direction, your upper body will lean forward. So don't fight this. Then your spine will also start opening up.
Yes. Yeah. It's kind of like if you think about it, um, initially you might be moving kind of like if your body's this way and your hips are back,
Yeah,
you're kind of like your weight is not yet fully in your legs.
yeah,
And then as your legs strengthen and build your capacity, then all the systems above can start to relax more. And so then naturally the posture starts to sit more over the legs. You can support your spine more, you can support your hips more. So it kind of it's sort of this changing like this rather than like trying to force it in the beginning. It's like just find where you can and then continue to gradually move in this general trajectory where it's like my head, my hips, and my feet all kind of like are centered as best as we can. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah. And so it's like we're stacking it like a strong building.
yes.
So part of that, it sounds counterintuitive that as we're working the lower body, we're relaxing. But one of the key things that we're doing here is we're learning to relax off any unnecessary muscle tension so that then we can access layers of fascial tissue, which sort of act like the suspension system for the body.
And for this, we just need a feeling and give the body space to open up, which can only happen when we consciously start relaxing. Because if we are fighting the position, we contract, and contract means the body pulls together. But we want to use the gravity to slowly open up, and just using this tension, what is really necessary to keep the skeleton in position, not more.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good way of putting it. And it's a different way of looking at developing the strength of our body, which can often be very muscularly driven. And there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that, but there's so much power that we have in the fascia system because of its kinetic properties. So it acts like this shock absorber, this spring-loaded system. So it develops a very dynamic sort of power as you can, essentially like if you take away the blockages to this spring, you know, then you start to kind of experience the body as more of an elastic structure, which is one of the key things to be more resilient to injury because like as the body changes direction and moves in different ways, it doesn't hit these kind of hard stops. It has more give and springiness, particularly around the joints. And so this is one of the key qualities that will be developed in stillness practices like the horse stance.
Yeah, and it's also one key principle to age gracefully, just to keep the springiness in the body.
Yeah, yeah, totally, totally. It's and like one of the key things with longevity is like developing enough muscle base, but then also it's I think what doesn't get talked about a lot is having the ability to utilize the fascia system so that then because more muscle doesn't always mean like better.
Yeah.
Like what we're looking at is like enough muscle so that the body is structurally supported, but then also an ability to relax so then the body is able to be efficient as well in the way that it moves. And like fascia is one of the ways that when you see an animal or an athlete or a dancer, people that move with efficiency, like they're utilizing their fascia system to a more complete degree.
Yeah, and we can also see it in performance sports like sprinting over the last decades, how the physical things changed. In the earlier years, all the sprinters were really more bodybuilders. Now they are sprinters on the top, which are not that muscular, but they are similar fast because they just use the body more efficient with more fascia focused things.
Yeah.
So yeah, we get more resilience and more power with less weight carrying around.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good way of putting it. And it's like it's signs of as we advance in our understanding of biomechanics and all of these things. And like it's funny how things kind of come full circle when you look at like the bodies of like even indigenous tribes people and how
Yes.
they performed and like they're a lot more wiry in their development and performed yeah different
Yeah.
to
Extreme feat with less muscle. So we can see muscle is important, but maybe not that important.
Yeah, so it's finding that balance, and this can be a really useful way to look at that and establish that balance. And but it is a different way of looking at things. It's different from like the body beautiful aesthetic approach, and there's nothing wrong with that. And but we can find that balance between aesthetics and function. And
Yeah.
yeah, so point number four, we kind of look at the lower body like the structure of a stone bridge, and in the middle, the hips is the keystone. So we're learning how to sink weight from the hips to then distribute that weight out through the legs into the ground. And this is where we start to develop this quality of rootedness where you feel very stable. And it's used a lot in martial arts because if you're rooted to the ground, you can develop a lot more power, and it's sort of like the roots of a tree, the deeper they go, then the more wind that tree can withstand and the more resilient that tree is.
Yeah.
And the last point is centering of the feet. I'll let you uh, start with this one.
Yeah. In a way, you already mentioned it. When we start off with Horton's practice, maybe the body is in this position. And over time, when we gradually build up the system, the physical system, naturally the body will start to center the weight on your feet. This is what this picture is talking about. And the more the body is able to center the weight on the feet, the more the body will start to go upright and building this alignment where there is less resistance against gravity.
Mm,
And for this thing to happen, this is nothing you can push because the whole lower body needs to adapt. It starts by your pinky toe and goes up into your hip and into your spine. So the whole system needs just time to adapt to the stimulus and slowly and gradually start to open up, build the strength and the stability so it can carry the whole body weight and start to really centering on the middle of your foot. Yeah, this is just only possible if you really practice constantly with a humble point of view according to your physical system.
And I find that like centering the feet, if there was one thing that would help you know where you're at and where to go, that's how your weight is distributed through your feet. Because if you try and sit down or widen too fast, you will straight away start to notice compensations. Either like there'll be a bias towards your weight coming onto your heels, or the inside of the foot, or the outside of the foot. And so that's going to be a sign, like once again, the quality that we bring to the practice is how we magnify. So if you start off and your feet are not centered, well, then you're going to deepen with uncentered feet. And then if the feet are not centered, then you're not developing the whole structure of the feet. And then you're essentially like skipping parts of the body. And so you develop a fragmented structure with essentially like weak roots, basically. And
Yeah.
it's not to say you're weak or anything like that, but it's just to encourage the focus of like be as centered as you can in your feet. Kind of, I find it useful to look at like keep your feet alive so that there's options of, like your feet can continue to move and recenter because like there is no center, just the ability to continue to recenter. And so we need some space to do that.
Yeah.
So one of the core things is, move your muscles, still your bones. And, that principle essentially just kind of means that we're learning how to relax the muscles over the bones as best as we can and allow the skeleton, like Marcus was talking about earlier, allow the skeleton to naturally align itself. Naturally, more space is created in the skeleton. And so we need aliveness rather than tension in the muscles. And so we're just continuing to learn how to relax and release unnecessary tension in the muscles. So rather than like going into that horse stance, being constantly tense, find that kind of space where you can be like gradually like relaxing off different areas, like putting your mind in different muscles that are holding on, like relaxing, breathing into those areas, relaxing them off. As they relax off, then other muscles kind of come online, and it's this kind of really wonderful organic unfolding process happening.
Yeah.
So we'll finish up with just looking at common mistakes with the horse stance. Now, these aren't like to try and put right and wrong over the way that we do it. These are just some signposts of to look out for. And this will be like a recap of a lot of the things that we've been talking about. But the first one is like going too deep too fast. And you can look at that with how your weight's distributed on your feet, how like tense your body is. If you fatigue in like 30 seconds or less, all of these signs you're going too deep too fast. You can do
Joint
that, but
pain.
by all means, yeah, you'll feel pain. You will compensate. Uh, it's not going to be that beneficial for you. If you want to do that, then you're probably better at just doing more traditional, like repetition based movement. And
Yeah.
that's also great. It has a different purpose.
Yeah, this is the thing with taking your butt out. And what we already mentioned before in the beginning, this can be useful. So your hip is able to open up. You just have to be aware of and use it consciously. Then there is nothing wrong about it. You just, yeah, if you have the awareness for that and using it for purpose, then it's good. If it's just happening and you're not aware of it, then maybe it's just good when you start looking out where your hip is aligned, in which position, and then use it more consciously.
Yeah, I think that's a really important distinction rather than like getting stuck in paradigms of right and wrong. It's just what have you brought awareness to?
Yeah.
What are you aware of? So the next kind of common thing that can happen is if you go too wide and you haven't developed that strength through the legs and the hips, like there will likely be what's called a valgus collapse of the knees, and this is going to cause damage and pain around the knees. You're
It's
likely
often
going to
also,
feel it. Yeah.
it's often just also a sign of that the feet are too weak on the inside, so you're not able to create this tension to stabilize through your inner thigh. Huh?
Yeah. So a useful thing with this is once again coming back to the centering of the feet, gradually deepening that stance, leaning the torso too far forward, like Marcus was talking about earlier, like it's a continuum. We're not to say that if you do this, you're doing it wrong, and then you should try and force your body into position. If you are doing this, be aware, and then be aware of where you're going with this, rather than trying to force your body into the position. I did this a lot at the beginning. I was trying to get the posture right, and I was just trying to like align it as best as I could. It wasn't until like I looked at a video of myself and I'm like, oh, well, the position that you thought that you're in, the position you're actually in is very different. And an important part of that first was just that awareness of going, oh, okay, I thought I was all upright, but I was really angled. And so like just becoming aware of that torso position.
Yeah. Yeah. The last one basically is just talking about muscling through the posture.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just go with for a fixed goal and then just hold on using your pure will to hold the body in the posture. Yeah, it's just coming back to which quality you want to magnify in your life.
Yeah.
That's all I can
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. So, and it's, like what often that will then create is disconnection from the body, because like you're dissociating from the experience, which is common like in military and all of that sort of stuff. Nothing wrong with that. It has its purpose. But, military is also associated with a lot of other PTSD and all that sort of stuff, because stuff happens, but then as you come out of wartime, and I'm not proclaiming to be an expert or knowing what that's like, by the way, but what we're looking to do here is to create a connection with the body. We're not at war with the body here. And
Yeah.
yeah, so what quality do we want to magnify is the question. So that's the horse stance overall. It's a beautiful practice. I really recommend anyone, if you would like to strengthen your lower body and like strengthen you, like on the inside, it's a really wonderful foundation of practice. So if you have any questions or you'd like any support, that's what we're here for. We have Movement Plus to explore it. And yeah, looking forward to hearing how you go on your horse stance journey.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us and see you soon. Bye bye.